For our purposes in English class, we are going to be making visual journals, which are journals that are art journals based on parts of the text that stand out to you. By creating these visual journals, taking a quote from the text that's important to you and representing it visually, you're going to be able to reflect on the text in the way that creates more of a personalized connection between you and the meaning of the text. Therefore, we're able to remember what's really important about the message that the story has given us. We can create a visual journal on two things. We can use it to journal about the meaning of the book through creating journals on pieces of the text that really connect to the meaning of the book. But you can also take a piece of text from the book that just uses descriptive language and create that scene that the author is trying to set for us with their descriptive language. Now, before getting started, it's helpful to look at some examples. This is one example of a journal entry by a student who was reading a book, and in the book that they were reading, the word yellow was used a lot. It was one of the symbols used in the book and in the story. So they used the word yellow a lot in their journal entry. You can play with many different kinds of text, and you can draw your quote out really big or really small, or some words might be a lot bigger and bolder than other words in your quote. The basic idea is that we'll have a quote drawn out, and then you'll surround that quote with imagery that makes sense to you for that quote. So in all of these examples, we have a quote surrounded by imagery that makes sense from the book and connects to the quote. And you can also use a mix of materials too. You can use collage and paint, or any combination of art materials. And it's pretty cool and really fun. So the first thing you'll do when you're thinking about making your visual journal is you'll have to start out by looking at the text. Now we'll be looking for a quote that really jumps out to you that you would like to represent visually in your journal. So I'm taking a look at our book, The Sea of Monsters, and I'm looking for a quote or two quotes that really jump out to me from the text. I might make a little mark where one is and move on to find another one if I am not sure about using that one yet. But in the end, I ended up choosing the first one that I found and linking it to another one. And I'll explain that later. Here we go. I am going to speed this up because it's kind of a long process. Okay, so I have my quote, and I have it in my head, but I also have it marked in my book with some sticky notes that are white. I'm now grabbing a piece of sketch paper so I can just sketch out my ideas before I really put them together. It might take a couple of tries to get this the way that you want it to look before you actually start drawing it in your journal. So I'm looking back at my quote. I might write down my quote, and then I'll start sketching my ideas. I chose to use the quote, "But if it's me in the prophecy," which is a question, a tough question, that Percy asks when he starts to realize his real potential as a half-blood and as a son of Poseidon. This question shows us that he's realizing that he might be the one that controls the fate of the gods in the future. I also tied in another element to this quote in my design. I chose to use the coordinates that Percy pulls out of his mind and uses for good on his journey throughout the book. And these quotes are, or these coordinates are something that Percy wouldn't have had access to unless he had his super powers given to him by Poseidon. So both of these elements, the quote and the coordinates, both show Percy's power as a half-blood and as a son of Poseidon, and his potential as a character in the book. Now I chose this theme because it stood out to me, but you can also choose some figurative language or descriptive text from the book and choose a quote of that descriptive text and then draw a picture that the text represents. That could be an idea also. As you may have noticed, I started in with very light pencil to get the shape of things, and then I drew a more definitive line with my pencil with more pressure on the paper to make sure that everything was visible once I started painting with my watercolors. I'm painting in the ocean using a variety of different colors. I didn't want my ocean to be just kind of flat blue, so I used some green in there to make it kind of oceany turquoise in a way. And as I go along using my Micron pen to kind of define everything a little bit more, you may notice that I made a big mistake. And if you can guess what the mistake is, I'll be very proud. It's not a drawing mistake. It's a spelling mistake. I wanted the word prophecy to really stand out, so I used my big black marker to color that word in. I'm also using colored pencils, introducing those into the process here. And excuse my head popping into the picture. I also want my waves to look a little more 3D, so I shaded in darker where the bottom of the wave is, and then got lighter and lighter toward the top of the wave with my colored pencil here. And I decided to do it for one wave, and then I thought it looked kind of cool, so I kept on doing it for all of the waves. Why not? Now I'm going in and adding those important coordinates that Percy retrieved from his powerful mind. And I decided to put them into the waves, kind of tossing about in the waves. The whole picture is supposed to be somewhat chaotic, but also serves a point to shine light onto Percy's potential. At the very end, I had realized that I had spelled the word prophecy wrong. So I decided to go in and fix my mistake. And that is why we use our pencil and check our spelling before we get into the long, exciting, and fun process of making art out of our quote. There we go. Happy journaling!